question's been asked, and probably by a lot of people, whether or not you can use other kinds of oil for the chain lubricating oil in a chainsaw instead of the expensive bar and chain oil that you buy at the hardware store or lumberyard. Now, this stuff's pretty expensive, so it makes sense that some people would ask that, especially when you compare it to cooking oils that are much, much cheaper. But there's actually two questions that have to be asked. Not only is it can you use it, but at what cost? What's the downstream results of using it? Now, let's start off with why we're putting oil in there. It's not like an automobile engine where you're putting oil in there to lubricate the engine. These are two-stroke cycle engines, and the oil is added to the fuel and comes into the engine in that way, and that lubricates the cylinders. So that's not what we're doing. The oil that goes in the reservoir is specifically to oil the chain and the bar. And the reason for that is that we've got a metal-on-metal interface. If you take a good look at your chainsaw, I don't care which chainsaw you're talking about, whatever kind, you'll find that the bar has a slot. It's actually a sandwich of 3 layers of metal, an inner core layer and 2 matching outer ones. And in doing that, it creates a little groove down the middle. And if you look at the chain, there are teeth coming down from the chain in addition to the teeth that go up and do the cutting that look a little like shark's teeth, and they go down in that slot. So you've got a metal-on-metal contact moving at a lot of speed. That generates a lot of heat and a lot of wear. So what we're doing is we're trying to keep that from wearing out. You know, we want our chain and our bar to last. We don't have to replace them. I know there's guys that end up replacing their chains all the while, but that's because they don't sharpen their chain. You should actually sharpen your chain every time you use the chainsaw, and it's really easy to do. So I don't understand why people don't do it. So this oil that we're putting in the reservoir, that's to lubricate this. And there's if you look inside the chainsaw, there's a sprocket right here that the chain comes around, and coming off that sprocket is a little tiny pump, and that pump is between the reservoir and the bar. And the output of that goes actually inside the bar in that, that center sandwich area, and from there it goes to the edge of the track where it lubricates the chain. Okay, so as long as we got oil in there, we're lubricating that, we're keeping our chain from wearing out, we're keeping our bar from wearing out, and we're making it easier for the engine or the electric motor if it's an electric chainsaw, because it doesn't have to work as far. It doesn't have to overcome that friction of the chain and bar interface. So if that's all it's doing it, why not use vegetable oil? I mean, come on, this is like, $20 for this container, and it's $4 or $5 for this container. Granted, that's smaller, but it's still cheaper, Why not use cooking oil? On the plus side, cooking oil is more environmentally friendly. We'll give it that. It's less expensive. And to some people it smells good. All right. Is it oil? Yes. Will it lubricate? Yes. But, and here's where we get the but. Okay, here's the problem. Cooking oil is a thinner viscosity than the oil that's created for using with the chainsaw, for the chain and bar oil. Okay, it's being a thinner viscosity. A couple things are going to happen. One, it's not going to lubricate as well. Will it go all the way down the bar? Will it lubricate the entire track? Good question. It might drip out before it actually does that, especially if you have a chainsaw with a long bar. It's going to leak more. Now, every chainsaw in the world leaks, and it's going to leak more. So that's a problem. The other thing, and a lot of people don't realize this, is that cooking oil becomes sticky after a while, whereas your chain and bar oil or motor oil really doesn't become sticky. Okay, so if that chain and bar oil is in there and you store your saw, what's going to happen is that it's going to leak, it's going to become sticky, and it's going to gum up the orifice coming out of that tank and the little pump, and it may just block it off entirely when it's gummed up. The other thing is it'll gum it up along the track, and so that'll make it harder to get the chainsaw moving again, and it may even attract insects. So there's some real potential downside to using any sort of vegetable oil instead of using chain and bar oil. And I include, when I say that, olive oil. Okay, some people say, oh, but olive oil is better. Well, yeah, it's better if you're cooking, but it's really not better to lubricate metal parts. So let's forget about that idea. The other option that might exist out there is motor oil. Now, when we're talking about motor oil, modern motor oils for new cars are very low viscosity, kind of like our cooking oil. If you're going to use a motor oil, you need to find something that's a closer viscosity, the thickness, how stiff how it flows to the chain and bar oil. Probably something like 30 weight. I've never actually done that comparison, but it would probably be something like that. Now, the other thing you've got to do if you're going to use an alternative oil, let me say this first. In an emergency, in a pinch, yes, you can use whatever oil you got. I mean, if I was out in the woods and I was on a camping trip and I had to cut some firewood, and it's getting cold and I need that firewood, and the only oil I've got is a bottle of vegetable oil, yeah, I'll use it. But when I get back home, I will clean my saw out thoroughly to get rid of every bit of that oil. You absolutely don't want to store the saw with that oil in it. That's where the problem really comes in. So can you use it in a pinch? Yes, you can. Should you use it regularly? No, it's not going to lubricate as well. Should you leave it in the saw? Absolutely not, because it's going to end up causing problems for your saw.